Sites around the world that have been associated with battles and other violent dramas can retain incredibly strong emotional imprints, where in many of these sites, people have reported either residual hauntings or spiritual hauntings. There are none more so than airfields. Airfields during wartime are a hive of activity where crewmen await their bombing missions knowing that there is a good chance that they will probably not survive. Along with officers deciding the missions, and the aircraft controllers in constant communication with the airmen would have created a tension that would exist for 24 hours of the day for months on end, year in and year out. It is no wonder that this sort of emotional drama would leave a strong emotional imprint that would result in these residual hauntings or spiritual hauntings from the servicemen that did not come back alive, or the operators who became attached to the airmen, seeing many go out on a bombing mission, then seeing only a few return. It would have been heartbreaking. The following is a haunting account from an airfield called Bircham Newton, Norfolk, in eastern United Kingdom, which served as an airfield during World War II. Bircham Newton Airfield in King's Lynn, Norfolk, was built at the onset of World War I in 1914, and after the war fell into disrepair. At the start of World War II, it was once again recommissioned when it was used by the Royal Air Force, the Royal Australian Air Force and the Royal Canadian Air Force. In both wars, the airfield would have seen much drama and tragedy, leaving a powerful imprint on the surrounding environs. After World War II, the site was taken over by a construction industry training company called CITB, where the officers' mess was converted into a hotel. Another part of the building became a studio for making management training films. At the back of the hotel, they built squash courts, where it appears the hauntings were most frequent. One day, two men were playing squash, and one of them noticed a strange figure staring down at them from the spectators' walkway that overlooked the courts. The figure looking down was dressed in an old-fashioned RAF uniform that appeared to be from the World War II era. The player quickly caught the attention of his opponent and pointed up at the spectral figure. They then both observed the man in uniform walk along the walkway and disappear through a doorway at the end. Both men were totally gobsmacked and were convinced that they'd seen a ghost. Frightened but at the same time curious, they decided to follow up this unusual phenomena and arranged for a tape recorder to be left overnight in the squash court. They had intended to stay overnight with the recorder, but immediately changed their mind and became spooked when they heard the sound of loud footsteps in the corridor. After setting up the recorder, they made absolutely certain that nobody was in the building, and then locked everything up knowing that nobody else could enter, as they had the only key to the building. On returning the following day, they were intrigued at what the recorder may have picked up. What they heard went far beyond their expectations, as they could plainly hear the sounds of an active airfield. They could hear both male and female voices, unusual pinging sounds and groaning noises. They could also hear the sound of an aircraft flying, and would later check with authorities that there were no aircraft in the area when the recordings would have taken place. And remember that this was in a squash court in a building that had 9-inch thick walls and should have been totally silent and blocked out all external sounds in the middle of the night. They then arranged for a BBC engineer to analyse the tape, where it could find no fault and believed it to be a genuine recording. The tape was brand new, so there could not have been any old recordings coming through. Because the walls of the squash courts were so thick and no outside sounds could have come through, the event caught the eye of outside interests who wanted to follow up on what they heard. A BBC television programme called Nationwide conducted its own investigation into the hauntings, where a reporter spent the night inside the squash courts with a tape recorder. The reporter claimed to have heard doors banging, an intense feeling of cold, and exactly 12:30 a.m. the recorder abruptly stopped for no reason. For anyone who follows paranormal shows, it is quite common for recording equipment to fail or malfunction when they're trying to record a haunting. They later brought a medium into the squash courts, where he described an Anson aircraft, which was a twin-engine British aircraft which saw service with the Royal Air Force and the Royal Canadian Air Force during World War II. He said it had crashed behind a nearby church where 3 of its crew, Dusty Miller, Pat Sullivan and Jerry Arnold, had perished. The medium claimed that the airmen were still present around the airfield because they did not realise that they'd lost their lives. Other people later came forward claiming that they too had experienced strange hauntings, while one student attending the course claimed that his bedclothes had been pulled off of him, and another claimed that his curtains had been torn down and thrown around the room. An engineer who had been working alone in the attic in what was once the officers' mess had been tapped on the shoulders 3 times and was so scared that he refused to enter the room again. Another witness saw the figures of a man dressed in an RAF uniform walk straight through a brick wall. However, before renovations, there had once been a doorway there. The witness was so scared that he quit the course. The window to the officers' mess was continually being broken, and the radiators in the mess were continually being turned off in the middle of the night, which would not have been an easy task as the switch was in a difficult location to reach. So it appears that Bircham Newton Airfield appears to be a mixture of both residual and spiritual hauntings, together with some evidence to back it up.